A few weeks ago, I saw a comment on a pastor's video that he had posted on YouTube. And he was talking in the video about inviting Jesus and the Holy Spirit to be our best friends and inviting them to both the Holy Spirit and Jesus, and how we can invite them to really be best friends with us in this walk with Him. And there was a comment on the video, and it said that, how do you do this? They were asking, like, I don't understand what you mean by that. Like, how does that look? How do you even do this? And I felt like I should share my story because it's really a testimony to how the Lord taught me how to do this, and how He used something that was really sad to be something so much greater. And so I thought I would just share, how do you actually do that? What does that even look like? What's a practical, tangible thing you can take and make it into something? Because sometimes we talk about these like ideas or things about the Lord and faith, and it sounds way out there, but what's something practical you can do to take those steps to make that happen? And so my story is 11 years ago, my best friend was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time when this happened, it felt like that was the end of the world, because she was really everything to me. She had become closer to me than my own family, and had been there for me more than my own family. And so it was just like, how can you let this happen, Lord? Like, how? And fast forward to January 2018, and I was 7 months pregnant with my oldest daughter when I got the phone call that she had passed away from cancer, and really from the drugs that were impacting her with cancer. And I walked out of work the next day, and I was just devastated. And I offered up this, not even really a prayer, but more of like a desperate cry in my heart. And I just said, like, up to the Father, like, what am I going to do? Like, who's going to be my best friend? And in that moment, Jesus showed up next to me on my right side, and the veil was so thin. And He whispered into my ear, and He said, will you let me be your best friend? And I hesitated for a second, because I knew now what it costed to say yes. But then I also weighed it against the consequence of saying no. And so I said yes, but I actually asked for time, which is kind of funny. But I knew that if I walked in deep, close connection with the Lord, that I was going to have to grieve it right then and there. And so not knowing what grief would do to my baby, to my unborn child, just not knowing like what the impact of that would be, I asked the Lord if He could give me time and space to have the baby, and then I said, and then we'll grieve. Like, I know that's what you're asking me to do, and we'll grieve it to the fullest, I promise. But give me time. And I asked for joy. And when I woke up the next day, I just had this unspeakable joy, and it lasted for the rest of the pregnancy. I like cannot describe to you this light and joy. I mean, it was just joy, and it poured out of me until she was born. And then that seemed to all pour out of me as well. And I began the process of grieving. And that same week that she came, my mom came to visit. And this was when I realized she had early onset dementia. And so back to back, I lost my best friend and began to grieve her, and the mom I had always known, and began to grieve her also. And fast forward maybe 6-8 weeks, I can't remember the exact time frame, but I was standing in my kitchen and scrolling Facebook, and I saw like some really juicy news to tell my best friend, and so I picked up the phone without thinking, and I just like scrolled for her name, and when I found it, I went to click call, and I realized I can't call her. Like, those days are done. And I remember just sinking to the floor in our apartment and just being like, I don't have anybody to call. Like, there's nobody else that would even care about this. And in that moment, the Holy Spirit said to me, call me. And I was like, what? And he said, call me. And I was like, what? You know what I was about to talk to her about. Like, you know I was about to gossip, right? And he just said, yeah, I know. And that was the moment I realized that the Holy Spirit has so much personality. Like, that he has this unbelievably kind of funny personality, because the way he said it to me was like, I know. Yeah, I know. You think anything's hidden from me? I know. And he said, but call me and tell me instead. And so I picked up like the proverbial phone, and I called the Holy Spirit, and I told Jesus and the Holy Spirit, like, this, everything I would have said to her, I just began to tell them. And that started for me this pretty incredible, beautiful relationship with both the Holy Spirit and with Jesus Christ. And I began to pick up the phone and call them. Anytime I had turned into telling them what I was thinking or what I was feeling, or like, how do I parent? How do I respond in this relationship? How do I handle this? What do I do? And they began to talk back to me and share their heart with me and share advice and give me wisdom. And it turned into this really unbelievable friendship. And so my response and how I would respond to that person is, you just start by telling them. You just start by telling them everything that's in your life. And what happens is, over time, you begin to tune into their voice, and you begin to hear them speak, and you begin to understand what they're saying. And it really blossoms into this unbelievable close friendship that is more important than any other friendship you can have. He is the one that sticks closer than a brother. And so if for any reason this is you and you don't know what to do, and you've wondered, like, how do I have that close relationship? What do I do? You start by just calling him. Don't pick up the phone to somebody else. Call him instead, and then see what happens and how that turns into something pretty incredible. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.